now. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our third webinar for the 2017-2018 academic year. We have the pleasure of having the director and the founder of the Media Education Lab with us to tell us about new exciting book, Create to Learn. I guess most of you know previous books that were more geared toward K-12 educators about media literacy, and I'm excited, thank you, Carolyn, to show the book. Now we'll see how media literacy and media production can actually be used in higher education. So I'm really excited to hear about the new book, the new website, and kind of a guide to read. So Renee, take it away.
Wow, thank you so much, Yanti. I'm so glad to see everybody here. Before we begin, let's just go around the room and introduce ourselves to each other, because part of the delight is seeing old friends and making new friends. Therese, we invite you to go first.
Hi, my name is Trace Woosley, and I'm a graduate teaching assistant at Boise State University in Idaho.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Frank.
Hi, I'm Frank Romanelli. I'm a writing and rhetoric teacher at the University of Rhode Island, and I am using the book right now as a resource in my Writing 235, which is a digital literacy writing class, and I'm loving it, and so are they. So.
Woo! Oh, I have to hear more about that. Thank you so much. Saeed?
Hello, I'm Said Tuzel. I'm a researcher on Media Education Lab, and also I'm a web designer and information designer of this book.
Thank you, Saeed. You designed the website for this beautiful book. The website looks awesome. We're going to show it off for the first time in a few minutes. Hong Yan.
I'm Hu Yan from China, and I'm a visiting scholar here with Renee. So I have finished reading this book. So the other day I told Renee, I found some of your ideas in this book. So sometimes Renee talks some ideas in the daily life. Oh, now I saw the ideas in his book. So back in China, I'm an English teacher. I'm going to bring some ideas back to my teaching using this book. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Oh, that's wonderful. Shahana, introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Shahana. I'm right now an assistant professor with St. Joseph's College in Bangalore.
Congratulations. I didn't know you had a new job. That's exciting.
Thanks.
Wonderful. Carolyn.
Hi, everybody. I'm Carolyn. I'm an event producer for the Media Education Lab, and I'm a half-time professor at Rhode Island College.
So glad you're here. Zoe.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zoe Wang. I am a PhD student at the University of Rhode Island and Rhode Island College, and I also work for the Rhode Island STEAM Center at Rhode Island College. I'm interested in social media and learning, specifically YouTube, and also I'm extremely interested in creativity and using digital media to create. Thanks.
Wonderful. Marquetta.
Hi everyone, I'm Marqueta from Charles University. I just woke up 2 minutes ago. I am a bit sleepy right now, so maybe if you give me 1 minute, I will tell you a bit more afterwards. But I'm excited to hear everything Rena has to say today.
And we're excited that you're going to be featured at our next webinar next month. So we're excited about that. Now, who is iPhone?
I think that's somebody who's using like the iPhone to, so it's one of the participants.
Got it. iPhone, we're glad you're here. So thank you so much for being patient with us. I'm going to share my screen with you and tell you a little bit about the book and a little bit about why I created it. So let's see here. Here I am at the Media Education Lab website. Give me a thumbs up if you can actually see the screen I'm sharing. Okay, so the new book is actually the product of the course that I've been teaching called Digital Authorship. And this course has emerged over a couple of years as I've been thinking about how it is to support students as thoughtful, critical creators. And so I'm going to take you to the book and just kind of walk you through the opening and tell you a little bit about why I created it. I wanted to create a book that would help my students have more freedom and more control over how they represented their knowledge from the experience of being in my course. So that's really why I created the book. I wanted to give my students more freedom and more control over how they represented their learning. And I'd been experimenting for years about having students learn how to access information, to analyze it, to create media, reflect on media, and use the power of communication and information to make a difference in the world. And I'd been experimenting with my students in asking them to create podcasts, to make a blog and maintain a website, to create infographics and data visualizations. Of course, everyone in this, everyone participating tonight knows what a big fan I am of screencasting, right? Screencasting as a powerful tool for representing your knowledge. And of course, video production and animation and remix. Last semester in my propaganda class, I had students for one assignment create a sequence of 15 memes to represent what they had learned in reading Eddie Bernay's classic 1928 book, Propaganda, right? And I was astonished at what a great job they did and how sophisticated their ideas were as they combined images and language to make memes. So the book was designed as a way to give students more freedom and more control over how to represent their knowledge. I'm really aware that many faculty are beginning to move beyond the academic essay as the major way to measure student learning. And don't get me wrong, I am a big fan of the academic essay. I think it's a very powerful form of creative work, right, to represent your learning. But it isn't the only way to represent learning. And what I've been finding is that when students have the freedom to choose for themselves how they want to represent learning, then they think a lot about that relationship between form and content, right? And they start to see themselves as people who can develop new ideas, not just restate what other people said, right? But actually create new ideas. And so this book is really aiming to do that. The first half of the book is really an introduction to the media literacy learning process that I created in 2010, that spiral of accessing, analyzing, and evaluating information, with lots and lots of examples of student work and a kind of, I would say, a light introduction to some big theories and ideas from a variety of fields, including media studies, education, human development, literary and cultural studies, sociology, and other fields, right? So that's the first half of the book. In the second half of the book, I showcase 9 different forms of media and introduce some big ideas about that. So what I thought I would do right now is take you to the website. I am so pleased that my colleague Saeed Tuzel took leadership opportunity and created this terrific looking website. And we are happy to announce that you are the first people to actually see it. So we're kind of thrilled about that. So this is the companion website for the book. Basically, this is designed to support instructors who might be using this book as a supplementary text or as a main text. Students can access the material, instructors can access the material, and there's a design studio where you can upload samples of student work so that students can be inspired by each other's productions. So let's take a look at it from the student's point of view, right? So students and instructors can both upload material for all 15 chapters of the book. And if we just start with the, ooh, sorry. I gotta go back here. What did I do here? If we just start with the first chapter, which kind of introduces a little bit about the rationale for the book, the main focus of chapter 1 is to consider your identity as a digital author. And the slides are shareable on SlideShare and downloadable and remixable, but really introduce the ideas about how when learners are active and selective and strategic in transforming information they've encountered and making it useful, usable knowledge, the quality of learning is deeper. They're not just memorizing for a test. They're actually creating materials and resources that will benefit others. So we think of the Create to Learn as a process where students get a chance to experiment. And in discovering themselves as digital authors, they get to reflect on the ethics of digital authorship and think a little bit about what it means to be a responsible communicator. So the biggest set of decisions that students make early on in the decision-making process have to do with how do they want to represent what they're learning. So, of course, we urge students to consider author, audience, purpose, and goals in creating to learn. And we really give an orientation to the strategy behind choosing what type of media to represent your knowledge, right? And so we introduce the concept of strategic communication. We talk about the rhetorical modes of purpose and target audience, inviting people to think about who are you trying to communicate to and what do you want people to think or feel or do. We use examples from a variety of different kinds of media to have students practice looking at a mentor text so that they really get the idea of making decisions is at the heart of this practice, and thinking strategically, right? By thinking about the audience, the knowledge that you want to share, the attitudes that you want your target audience to feel, and the behaviors that you want your target audience to do. We talk a little bit about how it's hard to tell sometimes what the author's purpose is, and so we have to make inferences. So we give samples of student work, right? And ask learners to infer the author's purpose. So I'm just going to see if this works here. Can we'll take a look at a sample of student work, and we'll see if we can figure out her purpose.
The Importance of Fantasy in the Classroom by Jordana Pachter. Information Competencies for Youth, Ignite Presentation. In 2012, over 75,000 NPR listeners voted for their favorite young adult books. Out of the 100 books chosen, 40% were fantasy. For almost a decade, the same genre has dominated YALSA's best books list. Yet a 1992 study of the most frequently required readings in high schools did not include any fantasy novels. Neither did a 2005 study, even though Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince topped the bestsellers chart. It is a baffling trend. Many educators believe that the best way to improve reading rates among young adults is to encourage them to read books they enjoy, yet fantasy is still conspicuously absent in the classroom. In part, it is simply the nature of canonization. Once certain texts have been established as the best and most important representations of literature, it is difficult to argue for the inclusion of newer or less conventional works. The 2001 adoption of the No Child Left Behind Act has posed another challenge. high-stakes testing coupled with scripted reading programs has left little room for deviation in the high school curriculum. But while these obstacles are common to all young adult books, the fantasy genre has faced additional censure. Disparaged as too childish, too subversive, too realistic, too unrealistic, fantasy is the underdog of young adult literature. Melissa Thomas notes that the problem...
Okay, so let's go back to my focus question. Can you infer the author's purpose from the clues that she has provided in the first minute and a half of her screencast? What's your guess about this author and her purpose? Was she informing, persuading, entertaining, or doing something else altogether?
I mean, it seems to me like being very advocating for fantasy. So I would say more persuasion from the way that I perceive it.
Okay, that's so. It seemed to you like she might be persuading that fantasy literature should be permitted or encouraged in the classroom. Any other inferences that you can make about the author's purpose based on the clues?
I feel like she's persuading. Oops, go ahead.
Go ahead, Frank.
I feel like she's persuading too, but I feel like she's also she's stating a proposition that she's building herself toward an argument.
Aha! Yeah, and you can see some clues that she's building an argument, right?
Mm-hmm.
Evidence in a certain way. She's just introduced at the end there that idea that fantasy might be too realistic, too unrealistic, right? So we can feel that she's assembling a set of facts and evidence to marshal a cause. Well, so we provide examples of student-produced video to help students think more clearly about their own purpose and their own goals, right? And then we invite them to think about what is the right medium for them to express their ideas, because the book introduces learners to 9 different forms: blogs, video, podcast, animation, infographic, vlogs and screencast, images, social media, and remix. Now, not everybody in the room is familiar with all of these terms. Some of these terms are quite new to some faculty and teachers. Let's see if we can, just amongst ourselves, distinguish between vlogs and screencasts. So, what's a vlog and what's a screencast? Who wants to explain?
I think vlog is namely is video blog. So it should include that someone talk in front of the camera and documenting what is happening. And versus screencast can be some sort of presentation that doesn't necessarily have the person in front of camera dictate.
Boy, that is a terrific explanation, Zoe. And so what I want to do right now is take you to the chapter on vlogs and screencasts, and so you can see how we explore that. So you've kind of gotten a sense of what the front of the book looks like, right? Which is you're invited to use some concepts and ideas to think through the process of creating. But let's say we want to get to the chapter 11 on vlogs and screencasts. So I just want to kind of talk through some of the ideas that are in this chapter, which I think will give you a good idea of the framing that the book uses overall, right? So we do talk about vlogs as a type of episodic video production tied to the rise of YouTube that involves a charismatic host, right? It's a performance media because that charismatic host is speaking directly to the camera, offering ideas or information, usually in a charming conversational style, right? And we introduced the concept of the parasocial relationship because vlogging creates this sense of a connection between the host and the audience, where viewers feel emotionally and socially connected, right? And at the same time, vlogs also are a form of like life performance, right? Where people self-document ordinary life to inform, entertain, and persuade others. And bloggers make choices about how to depict themselves, whether they should be standing or sitting, and whether they should include their whole body or just their face. And bloggers are producers because they're making all of these decisions. And so in the chapter, we kind of explore the kinds of choices that vloggers are making, and we invite reflection on thinking about the consequences and impact of those choices. So in the theoretical literature on vlogging, we know that there are 4 fundamental video production techniques that impact how the speaker is perceived, right? The closer the closer the close-up, the more sense of emotional intimacy that's going to occur, right? And since YouTube videos are so low resolution, a close-up creates visual intensity because it minimizes the lo-fi, the low resolution of the medium. The concept of direct address is really important. When the performer uses terms like you, looks into the camera, and that essentially elevates me, the viewer. I become equal to the performer, and I become part of the story. And that sense of immediacy is really pleasurable. So it makes me feel like we're in the same space and time, even though we're not. The third big concept in vlogs has to do with the way camera movement is used to affect the ethos of the performer, right? So a lot of vloggers will use a selfie stick walking around in the city, and that creates this moving camera effect. And it makes the video seem exciting and unpredictable, right? And then of course, framing. It's quite ironic that in vlogging, poor quality video can actually make a performance seem like more real, more intimate. The rough image quality actually marks the situation as authentic. And unusual framing can be used to suggest the private nature of the message, right? As if the camera was just a witness. So now we've kind of introduced some theoretical concepts that help students think about the choices they're making as vlogging. And we do the same thing for screencasting. And we give an example from John Green's amazing critical analysis of the Monopoly app. We talk about screencasting, like Frank said, screencasting as a way to develop an argument where you use claims, evidence, and reasoning. And then we give you some tools to make a screencast, including QuickCast, Screencast-O-Matic, Screencastify, and even some strategic advice on how to do that by first studying the genre, selecting a mentor text to get an example of a screencast that you think is well constructed, planning your project, maybe creating an audio recording of your content first before you create the visual materials, choosing a tool and getting comfortable with that tool, and then learning how to edit and upload. So screencasts can be really powerful in academic work because they can be used for purposes of demonstration or a slideshow or a conversation between 2 students or a whiteboard drawing. And there's a lot of use of screencasts in higher education, maybe sometimes more by teachers than by students, but we think creating a screencast or vlog can be really powerful. And each of the chapters ends with a production activity that invites you to create something and then reflect on the practice of creating it. So in that couple of minutes there, I just kind of walked you through a chapter, right? So you can see that the chapter has kind of a mix of introduction to ideas that help you be more reflective and strategic as a creator, examples that help inspire your creativity, and some kind of contemporary storytelling that connects these ideas to the culture you're already a part of. Now, I'm just going to take 5 more minutes to show you another part of the website that is really, really cool. And let me just share my screen with you. So Said, in building this website, of course, not only put the slides up, which you can download or just you can create notes for, but all of the videos and digital content that's referred to in this chapter, this is chapter 11, all of the links in the book are here on the web page, right? So if, for instance, you want to see the vlog that debates Austin Powers versus James Bond in the epic rap battles of history, which is a terrific video, there it is, right? Or if you want to see the YouTuber explain her tutorial on how she makes her vlogs, these are all here, right? Or a high school student who shares her experience on how making math videos prepared her for college. Or YouTuber Cat Black explains how conflict and controversy is part of the economics of YouTube, right? Because the book introduces you to some words, we also have a little vocabulary flip so that you understand what is a vlog, right? What are the 4 fundamental production techniques? Well, you already learned them, didn't you? The close-up, the direct address, the camera movement, and the framing. You might make sure you can define screencasting. Make sure you know words
Genre.
like genre, right? So that's kind of cool. And finally, I'll take you to my favorite part of the website and one we're hoping that you guys can help us with. So we've just begun the process. You can log into the website up here at the top, and you can upload examples of student work, right? So for example, my students were invited to make an infographic, and one of my students made this infographic as a way to represent beauty propaganda, right? Looking at the ideal women presented over the years, over the decades. Another student did a timetable on propaganda in cigarette advertising. So these are students who are really exploring these new genres and forms. They include a documentary, some screencasts, some podcasts, and more. There was one I wanted to show you. Oh, hold on just a second. This one's kind of interesting. Let's take a look. It's called Teen Bookmobiles.
Thank you for viewing my Ignite presentation. My name is Chelsea Ordner, and this presentation is designed to cover the grant proposal I am writing to create 2 bookmobiles for teens in the state of Rhode Island. Bookmobiles began as a way for libraries to reach underserved and diverse populations that were unable or unwilling to travel to a library branch. Providing resources to rural families, immigrants, and inner-city children, mobile libraries were a major force in shaping the public library as it is now known. Today, bookmobiles and mobile library services have morphed into an imperative and, sadly, underused resource that could greatly benefit our teens. Rhode Island has made progress in leaps and bounds in the past 2 years when it comes to developing teen spaces in local libraries. Thanks to the passion and dedication of key people like Jack Martin, Renee Hobbs, and Margot Nishimura, perceptions about media use and young adult relationships to the library have been changing. It is my hope that these changing perceptions can be used to my advantage in proposing 2 mobile teen space libraries. It is my plan to maximize on the...
Okay, so in this short video, you can see that she's basically, she's developed a project, an experiential learning project, and then created a 6-minute video screencast to develop and explain her proposal, and maybe ultimately to persuade her viewers that they should fund the project. And I think in some ways what I'm hoping is that student work samples can be a kind of cross-disciplinary inspiration. It's my hope that this book will be used not just in communication and media classes, but as a supplemental text in other kinds of classes where student media production might be valued. Okay, so now I've kind of introduced the book. Frank, I've got to hear from you, because to my knowledge, you're the first person on the planet who's actually teaching with the book. Can you tell us a little bit about what your experience is like, and what you're learning and how your students are reacting to the book?
So, we've been talking about the book since you started it, so I was very excited waiting for it to be published. So for those of you that don't know, the class that I teach is Writing 235, which is called Writing in Electronic Environments, which my interpretation of that is it's a digital literacy writing class. And I give them a number of projects through the semester. And while they're doing the small projects, well, not so small, but while they're doing each class project and developing their ideas around digital literacy, they are working on a topic that they've chosen from their own major, and they're looking at how digital literacy is being used in a profession in their major. And then they will present that at the end of the semester, each in their own way, and that's my opportunity to see what they've learned about digital literacy through their presentation, the metacognition piece, and also what they've learned about how digital literacy is used in their profession. So that's the class in a nutshell. So every chapter in this book touches on that in some way. Yeah. So I started with the reflection questions at the end of chapter 1, and they loved them, and the response to them were great. And I can share some of those with you if you want, just a quick look, because I brought them up. So this is, I set it up as a Sakai quiz because they're familiar with that, and basically gave them the opportunity to answer each question. This was the first question. When we were a leader in creating a project, when we were a contributor or a collaborator. And as you can see, they were pretty verbose in their answers. And I gave them each of the questions. So and then we followed up with a conversation in class about those questions. The one chapter that I've shared with them, because their first major project in the class is to develop a blog. So I used chapter 7, blogs and websites, because I can get a deuce out of that chapter, because at the end of the semester they're gonna do something with creating a website in addition to their blog. And then I've been teaching from the other chapters. I will definitely use, right now when I go back next week, I'll be working out of chapter 6 because they're gonna be looking at they're gonna be critically analyzing web spaces. We've already started to do that, actually. We used the Media Education Lab last week, and we went into Mind Over Media and had some fun with those videos. And students had a blast with those. So I got some great video footage from the classroom that I use of each of them working on their own screen on different videos. Pretty cool. Cool. So we're having a good time. My intention is to document all this so that I can use this book next semester as a text for the students to actually purchase and have.
Boy, that's exciting, Frank. I'm so glad to hear you're having fun with it. I guess I wasn't, in my own practice, I wasn't imagining that the book would be used as a, like you would, this week we're going to learn infographics and next week we're going to learn podcasts. I wasn't imagining that at all. I was more imagining the idea that students would choose which medium they wanted to learn. So maybe we would all read chapters 1 through 6 for the front of the book to get the grounding on the process and the key theoretical and conceptual principles at the heart of digital authorship, right? But then, in my mind, students dip into the second half of the book. The kid who wants to do a remix project reads the remix chapter, right? And the kid who wants to make an animation reads the animation chapter. So I wasn't really imagining that everybody would proceed in lockstep through a series of production projects. If you only have a 12-week semester, that...
And I agree with that, Renee. And when they all have the book in their hands, that's definitely going to be the approach. Right now, I have to, I have to feed them the information, so they can't go to the book as a resource because they don't have it. So my intention is that they will, and I can certainly share my copy with them if they have a particular question and they want to read something. I have no problem doing that with them on an individual basis, and I will.
Yeah, good point, Frank, because the book didn't get published till after the semester started. So in a way, you're kind of experimenting with it before it becomes like something they read on their own. You're poaching from the book to build in, and that's nothing wrong with doing that either. That's partly why we created the website, because having examples and having especially the great examples that are in the book, which are really interesting and fun, those are valuable to all kinds of instructors.
Yeah, the website's going to be a blast second half of the semester, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I guess we can open it up to dialogue conversation. Yanti, I think I've introduced the concept of the book.
Yeah, so we have 25 minutes to maybe start with some questions or comments, and then we'll see how the discussion goes. And I think, there's a lot of things to discuss in here, especially with the global representation here. That would be really interesting to hear about also cultural kind of way of, is that basically from a class that was designed in the US, is that applicable in Turkey, China, India, the Czech Republic? And can you see how I would really love to hear from each one of you from this presentation and what you know from the whole work, how is it applicable for your own setting?
So, so for instance, in India, first of all, digital literacy or media literacy is still seen as something that's extracurricular, and it's not a part of the curriculum as yet. So now when I am dealing with college students and I am talking about, so they're all mass communication students. So they have to make vlogs and they have to make screencasts and a part of their journalism process. So one thing that I have learned while I was with Renee and all of you is, like how we, when I used to go to schools with you, like how your kids are creating something and then having this safe space to have a very safe conversation and discussing about things. So knowing how politically, like in India, you have to be politically active, but these kids are not politically active. And so their decision-making process, and even as a journalist, to have to go and start talking about something, you need a minimum idea of what's happening around you in your own country in terms of knowing both sides of the story. So this is how I think in India, my students right now, both undergrads and masters, they're using these various platforms to create things, and they are learning it by themselves as well as through us. And what the one thing that I have done after I joined as a new professor is create that. So they have their own websites where they have all their production, where there is a space to discuss. Because what I noticed is it always bred this sort of a contempt towards each other as to my production is better than yours, and I did not want that sort of a discourse happening in my class. So I put it up on the social media for them to also understand this whole concept of, how Yonti, you used to talk about empathy, because now I have everyone's production in front of me. So I am going to have this very responsible conversation, and even if I'm critical, how to responsibly conduct it. So I try to kind of get my research and all of your research into because it's not part of the curriculum. So this is how I think in India, at least, I am trying to bring in digital literacy in a kind of a college format.
Wow, thank you, thank you so much for sharing, Shahana. I do think that that issue of creating a climate of trust and respect where people can provide feedback and listen to each other without it being competitive, without it being snarky, is really, really important. And I think for students who are beginning to think about being community engaged media makers and journalists, this book is a little bit of an on-ramp. So one chapter deals with doing interviews, right? So it turns out that, you know, we can't make any assumptions about what students know or don't know about conducting interviews. So in fact, it's a pretty easy on-ramp to how do you interview a stranger and get meaningful information from that person, right?
Yeah, they have to, yeah. It's very tough. And the problem is they go to a politician or they go to an academician, and whatever information they're getting, they take it as a first-hand information and believe everything. So that's where, you know, digital literacy and media literacy comes into play, where you start dissecting the information that you have. So that's very important. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
So anybody else wants to share, like Shahana, how do they Honyang?
I want to say, like, since I have been here, I found like the university in the States is very digital. Back in China, in my university, it's not very digital. So my students have a computer or have laptop. So and in the university, in my university, we the university will restrict the access to internet during like the class time. So like in the morning from 8 o'clock to like 5 o'clock, this is like for teacher to have class. They will restrict internet so that the students can be like attentive to class instead of like go to internet when we have lessons. So we have this problem. So I think it's like we use PPT and video and remix a lot, but for we blacks, that is not. If I assign a homework, a digital homework, some students, they may have trouble to like hand in because they don't have computer or they don't have internet access. So it's quite different. And I feel like maybe in the developed cities in China, the internet access and then they're more digital. But in my hometown, like it's underdeveloped. Many of my students, even if they're like university students already, they don't have internet, they don't have a computer, they don't have internet access, but they can use their cell phone to do some work, but they cannot like print or like hand in some homework digitally because they have to use like the computer to do it. So it's quite different from here. So I think that is the barrier. I mean, that is the difficulties for the like digital tools to be like implemented in my university because of the internet problem.
Yes, and Hong Yan, it is not just an issue of developing nations and developed nations. I've just spent a week in Germany, and Germany is a highly developed, industrialized nation, but the approach to educational technology in Germany is it's focused on, it's teacher-centric. Right? And so the tool is really used by the teacher as a transmission model. So I do feel like this approach that I propose in this book, and that is part of my fundamental pedagogy, which puts student creative expression at the center of the way of really deep learning. I think it does challenge ideas about traditional ways of thinking about higher education. And as a result, the systems that universities build to support this form of learning may not be in place everywhere. And even attitudes might be different about creating to learn. I know that for my students, one challenge is really about their awareness that they are beginners, right? You know, in your mind, when you start making a media project, you think you're going to make something that looks like HBO, right? And then the reality of it is it's a beginner project, right? And so dealing with that gap between what students aspire to create and what they can actually create as beginners means dealing with, you know, ego and dealing with feelings of inadequacy and maybe even of not wanting to share the work. But all those conversations represent opportunities for students to think about their identities as authors in the digital space.
Renee, you mentioned.
Yeah, Frank.
Renee, you mentioned the idea of getting the book beyond the communications classes, and you know that I do my projects across the curriculum. That's my approach. But you know that I think I've mentioned to you too that I'm working with an engineering student from last fall, who I thought his project really had some promise, and I asked him if he wanted to redo it better. And we started just working on redoing the audio track, and we were going into the hub and going into the audio booth, and we were doing. And then then I showed him the video that my other student made, Samantha, that you love. Right. So now he's redoing this whole video. And that's wonderful. And we've talked about how he can use that video, like he can share it with his advisor and maybe use it for incoming engineering students to understand some of the basics of open source and electronic engineering. That's the subject of the video. So now with this book in hand, my students will have those resources to be able to go through as needed kind of. So.
Frank, thank you for sharing that really interesting idea. I do feel like students get inspired by seeing other student work, right? That's partly the genius behind Said's design of creating this space that has a place for students to see other students' work. And for this thing to take off, we're going to invite all the labsters and certainly everyone who's on the call tonight to practice. So I'm going to give you a demonstration about how to do that. Let's say you go to the design studio and you say, okay, so my students are going to make animation, right? So we provide you with 3 of our favorite tools, OSNAP, Powtoon, and Movely. These are easy online tools for creating animation. And then you can easily upload your animation with a URL link or the file or an image. And that process of uploading is the way that your students' work gets featured, right, on the resources section. In the future, we're hoping that faculty and instructors may even want to share examples of assignments and graded work. Over time, we hope this can grow into a really robust form of sharing. And maybe sharing like this could improve the way instructors think about the design of their assignments. Who knows? So just like everything we do at the lab, we're not exactly sure what the future holds for this kind of sharing, but we'll learn as we go, right? We'll learn as we go. Pam.
Can I add something? And this is about that peer sharing that Frank was talking about. Is I just got my book, and I have to say I was very excited when I got, you know, that I'm an experienced digital author, but it made me think about how that could be used. And I don't know how you expected it to be used, Renee, but if that was done in the beginning of the class, you could kind of assign kids a DLQ, like what's your digital literacy quotient? And you'd also be able to find out who among this class has already, you know, produced a video, who's done a blog. And then you could match each, pairs, teams, where you'd have one experienced student helping others who haven't done it, and hopefully the other way around, because I could see in a class like this where somebody would come in thinking, this is a snap because I've done this, this, and this, but they haven't done that or that. And so you want to move them into doing the new things. And so that might be a way where they could share their expertise, and somebody who knows how to interview but who hasn't done a lot of digital stuff could help with that.
Renee?
I can't hear you.
No, I unmuted you.
Oh, thank you. Oh, Pam, several good ideas there. So first of all, you're making me think that the whole checklist that we created on paper could be something we digitize. We should put that on our notes for talking about it at our next meeting. Maybe we make a little questionnaire so there's a digital version of it. I love that idea. And Pam, your point about the idea of using that as a diagnostic that would help you have students collaborate more effectively. Love that idea pedagogically. That just seems really smart, and to help students stretch out of their comfort zone.
Yeah.
I want to share with you that so in my class, when they're working to do design, I'm not asking who has experience and who has not, because a lot of the time those who are experienced feel that they don't have enough experience because they know more. So what happened is that I give the assignments and I am encouraging them to help each other. And because of the structure of the class that is like not really a circle but semicircle, so when somebody has an issue, I'm saying, and I'm helping, but I cannot help all 20 students at the same time. So they're starting to work, and as you see, like now we're middle of the semester, they're starting to already like help each other, and you see this collaboration without doing a questionnaire in the beginning. It kind of goes into it when they see each one, what they know more and what they know less, and who can help each other.
Organically.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's wonderful, and that's because you're creating that collaborative learning environment. I want to welcome Mary Wallace. Mary, so nice to see you. All your friends are smiling at you.
Marquetta, you wanted
Marquetta,
to...
You had your hands raised. Talk to us.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, I wasn't sure if you were talking to me. Yeah, I just wanted to say when my computer got disconnected after the question about the different countries, so I'm sorry I couldn't answer immediately, but I wanted to go back to it because I think the Czech Republic is very interesting. Charles University, we can basically do anything we want, and I think it's mainly because no one does anything, that everyone just teaching in a traditional way, and they have traditional assignment and exams. So actually, I have very free hand to do whatever I want, which is very funny for me. So I'm trying to explore many different ways. And I always tell my students, this is the win-win if you guys do video essays and podcasts as the final projects, because it's easier for me to evaluate and much faster. And they love it and they're very excited about it. And I'm not teaching media or digital literacy, so it's actually other subjects that I'm using it. And they're creating video essays, radio podcasts. They are doing research posters and other sessions. But what I'm actually, because this is how I started, but now since I got used to doing this, I actually started to adding other things along the semester, which are more hands-on and offline. So I'm using Lego series play and Dixit cards. So we start with that, for example, today, actually, or yesterday for me, I was teaching a children and media session, and we had a Lego series plays, and they were creating a metaphorical expression of a child and the childhood as a world. And then I explained based on that it's a construct, that as though they constructed the Lego, the childhood and child is also a construct. So actually that we create these steps that they start collaborating offline and without any technology. And then towards the end of the semester, they start using the technologies and bringing it to the different in virtual environment. So it's like a process that is first stripped out of the technology, but then it's bringing it to another level. And so the students usually love it because, like I'm saying, no one else does anything. But I do not have the digital literacy, media literacy connection yet. So I'm not teaching them about audience or framing, or it's more still focused on the content and not so much about the other things.
Wow.
Students are exploring themselves.
But it seems to me like you're using very creative tools to get them to think about concepts, and you're enacting creative practices that are introducing them to concepts. So this form of pedagogy seems very well aligned to the digital authorship concept that we're developing in this book. So thanks for sharing.
Yes, I will buy the book.
Just one more small point, if I could, Renee, that I wanted to share with you also is after we went through and kind of prepared them for their blog project, and we worked with Chapter 7, and that was the one that I actually gave them to read, we had the good fortune of having a professional blogger do a Zoom with us who was not an academic. And someone used the word organic before, without even having any planning conversation with her at all. I just let her do her thing. She just made everything in the chapter become so real. And that just reinforced that, that it was right on.
Cool. So in a way, by you bringing in guest speakers like that, a real world blogger, a professional blogger who's paid to write for a living, that reinforces the ideas of the chapter. It motivates the kids to work hard on their writing, not just for an A, but to really see this as developing a professional competency. It's exciting. Anyway, I hope you guys read the book. I hope you know what I really need is I hope you read the book, and I hope you put up an Amazon review, okay? Even if you don't like the book, that's okay, but it needs an Amazon review. So I hope you consider offering an Amazon review. And please do check out the amazing website. The URL is createtolearn.online. And I'm just taking you back to it now. There it is. There it is up at the top. I think you'll have a fun time poking around in it, and it'll definitely give you a taste for what's in the book. And of course, we welcome your suggestions on how we can make it better. Yanti, thank you so much for inviting me to talk about the book tonight. What's happening next week or next month?
Yeah, so we're going to have in 2 weeks, we're going to have Marquetta, right? That is going to do a webinar on her case study. And then we have, I'm going to give a webinar afterwards. And we have already set up for November the fake news with arresting knowledge and tribe-worthy. And we're still going to have like one more webinar for the end of this semester.
So Marquetta, since you're coming up on the 23rd, can you give us a 1-minute pitch about why we should tune in?
No, I think she was.
We lost her.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Too early in the morning in the Czech Republic. So again, thank you very much, everybody, for another amazing webinar. Thank you, Renee, for introducing new resources, as usual. Very helpful for all of us. And we'll see you in our next webinar with Marquetta in 2 weeks.
Thank you, guys.